like a mighty long time. Shoo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Shoo-ba, my baby. Hello, stranger. It feels so good to see you back again. Come on, boy, how long has it been? It seems like a mighty long time. Shoo-ba, my baby, you. Seems like a mighty long time. Yes, I'm so glad you're back again. Here in my arms now, baby. Ooh, sugar, my baby. Hello, stranger. Ooh, it feels so good to have you back again. Tell me how long has it been? Ooh, it seems like a mighty long time. Shoot up, my baby. Ooh, it seems like a mighty long time. Shoo-doo-doo-doo-doo. My baby, shoot up. Shoot up. Hello, hello, hello. Shoot up, my baby, shoot up. Shoot up, my baby, shoot up. Shoo-doo-doo, shoo-doo-doo. Shoo-doo, shoo-doo, shoo-doo-doo. My baby, my baby, Shuba, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, Shuba, my baby, Shuba, I'm so glad you're back, my baby, seems like a long time. Shoot up, my baby. Shoot up, my baby. I'm so glad you're back, my baby. Seems like a long time.
Hey, I'm so glad you back. Hello, stranger. Now listen, I got time today. It is like 11:47. I'm set up in the media room. I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier or before, because trying to do it in my room on the bed was quite uncomfortable. But I'm set up in the media room, chilled out, except for minus one thing. And put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. I'll wait because I know there's like a 5-10 second delay before I say something and you hear it. Please do me a favor, put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Anybody, somebody, scream. Ah! Come on. Thank you. So listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play one more song and I'm going to go and get my Long Island iced tea or perhaps an eggnog and rum if I have any more left, because I'm going to kick back and I'm going to read at least 2 chapters, starting back with chapter 9, because last week, Friday, I damn near finished the whole chapter before I realized nobody could hear shit I was reading. So because I read the majority of it, it's not going to be exciting to me. You know, I like to read shit for the first time that you hearing it. You know, I don't like to read stuff over again because it just takes away. But I'm going to try to read it as interesting as I can. But before I get to that, let me just go get my drink. We're going to have one more song. It's a good one. And I'll be back after these messages. Here we go.
I know a place. Ain't nobody crying. Ain't nobody worried. Ain't no smiling faces. No, no, lying to the races. Help me. Come on, come on. Somebody help me now. I'll take you there. Help me, y'all. I'll take you there. Help me now. I'll take you there. Oh, I'll take you there. Oh, oh, mercy. I'll take you there. Oh, let me take you there. I'll take you there. Oh, let me take you there. Gregory, play your piano now. All right. Come on now, play on it, play on it. Daddy, 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 daddy. Ooh, oh, all right, baby, little lady, need you here, help me out, come on, little lady, all right. Doing something so I know a place, y'all. I'll take you there. Ain't nobody crying. I'll take you there. Ain't nobody worried. I'll take you there. No smiling faces. I'll take you there. Lie to the races. I'll take you there. Oh, I'll take you there. Oh,
I got eggnog and rum. Last bottle. Let me get my first sip. My nigga. Ooh, this is good. Hey, you know what I realized? That men don't grow hair on their chest anymore. Nigga, look at your chest. You got hair on your chest? How old are you? 38, 35, 46? You don't have hair on your chest. Back in the 70s, dudes, young boys, 19, 20, 21, they had hair on their chest. You don't believe me? Go pull up old albums of funk bands or whatever. Anybody from the 70s and the 60s, especially the 70s, they had like open shirts and stuff. They had hair on their chest. Niggas don't grow hair on their chest no more. Why is that? Think about it. Dude, you don't have hair on your chest. Think about your uncles, your father, your brothers. Do they have hair on their chest? If this was the 70s, everybody would have hair on their chest. But you or none of your people do. Why is that? I ain't seen hair on the chest of a man since the fucking 70s. I ain't never dated a man that had hair on his chest yet. But in the 70s and 60s, everybody had hair on their chest. Look, Teddy Pendergrass, chest full of hair. Marvin Gaye, chest full of hair. Every last one of them fucking Temptations, chest full of hair. Where'd it go? I don't know. All right, I'm getting to the book. Chapter 9, Switch, Motown, and Me. So there's a picture here. It's Rick James on the left, Jermaine Jackson in the middle, and Gregory Williams, the author of this book, on the right. All right, I'm going to read this, which is the reason why I definitely need this alcohol, because I'm reading this shit again for the second time in a week. And I'm going to try to keep it interesting, or read it interesting, as if it's the first time I'm reading it. My nigga. Here we go. Well, Jody and I made that fateful journey to Los Angeles. We hit Hollywood armed with one tape and blind confidence we were going to get our record deal. While on our quest this day, and after being rejected in our impromptu chance meeting with then RCA Records president Don Berkheimer, we stepped back out on Sunset Boulevard, headed east, and wound up stopping 2 blocks from RCA at this tall office building just off the northeast corner of Sunset and Vine. In front of the building was a large emblem of the letter M resting on top of a few short stairs, and another one front and side on the top right corner of this 22-story building. Unknown to either of us at that time, this big M represented, of all places, Motown Records. Not knowing where we were and what was about to take place, Jody and I made our way inside the building and stopped at the big business directory, which was mounted dead center of this lobby. We began to scour this directory for an attorney to represent us in a newly decided claim / suit against Barry White. And when we came upon the name Kirk Lawson, attorney at law, on the directory, it was clear that both of us somehow felt he was the one who would help us slay this dragon named Barry White for the rape and robbery of our band, White Heat, and having used our talents while treating us like red-headed stepchildren. That's a nice way of saying you treated us like a bunch of bitches and hoes. Upon giving us the boot, since the band's name White Heat was created and owned by Barry, he took ownership of that name when he dropped us from his roster and from RCA Records, leaving us nameless, homeless, and stuck in the Midwest. To add insult to injury, Barry White even stole our bass player, Vince, who initially allowed the band to think he was going home to Pittsburgh for the weekend, when in actuality, Vince and Barry had been plotting behind our backs that Vince would join his band once White Heat was dropped. Anyway, that's a dirty fucking game, ain't it, y'all? Anyway, Jody and I had took note of Mr. Lawson's suite number, hopped on an elevator, and headed to the 20th floor to Mr. Lawson's office suite. Once in the lobby, Jody and I waited our turn to speak with her as she was engaged in conversation with this small, thin black man who we took to be an attorney working in the suite. And as he was given his mail and he began to walk away, the receptionist looked toward us and asked, "May I help you?" "Yes, we're here to see attorney Kirk Lawson," Jody said. Upon hearing his name, he quickly stopped in his tracks and said, "I'm Kirk Lawson. What can I do for you, gentlemen?" To our surprise, Mr. Lawson stood about 5'6" to Jody's and my 6 feet tall, and he spoke with this thick Southern accent. "Hello, I'm Greg Williams, and this is Jody Sims. We were in a band called White Heat, produced and managed by Barry White and signed to RCA Records a couple of years ago." He reached out to shake our hands, welcoming us, and he invited Jody and me to follow him to his office. Once in and seated, he listened to our tale of woe and asked a few questions and quickly shot our dream down because we did not have any contracts or documents from the Barry White deal to show him. So, in this case, he had no choice but to let us know there was nothing he or anyone can do without contracts. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a pleasure to be back, Mariah. Hey, Tanya Brown, what's going on? And Marlon and Tony, thank you for stopping by. So, no dragon would be slain here today, and Jody and I would have to keep it moving, emptier than we were when we first walked into this building. I can't recall how or when, but in sharing our life story and then current condition and circumstance with Mr. Lawson, we discovered that not only did he sound like a knowledgeable and bright attorney, he was a kind, compassionate man, because Jody and I exited his office downhearted, but $20 richer, because upon having heard our story, he clearly took pity on us and reached in his pocket and loaned us $20 to eat off of for the next few days. Now, you know we way back in the early 70s, because $20 won't even last you 2 hours today. $20 was enough for them to eat off of for the next few days. Think about it. Again, we thanked him for his time, advice, and his money, promised to pay him back when we returned with the record and management contracts, and made our way from his office suite onto the elevator to begin our journey back to Darnell and then this couch and floor. The irony of our leaving Kirk Lawson at the precise moment and selecting this particular elevator, we had no idea, nor could anyone have guessed what fate had in store for us, our bandmates, and indirectly our families' lives forever. While it seemed to us, that time was standing still, suddenly 3 elevator bells rang simultaneously, announcing their arrival. Of these 3 possible chariots to the ground floor and out of this tower of doom, together we picked the elevator and got on, not knowing that this elevator would bring us face to face with our dreams, our destiny, because 2 floors down, Jermaine Jackson of the Jackson 5, wife Hazel Gordy Jackson, and Motown Records were waiting to join us on our ride down and pick our lives up forever. And as the elevator bell rang, announcing its stop on the 18th floor, Jody, me, and a couple of others moved back to make room for whomever was to join us. And as this black couple entered these doors, Jody and I looked at each other, immediately knowing who our new arrivals were. And because this particular elevator was partially full of people between them and us, all four of us simply smiled, nodded in acknowledgement of each other, and continued on in silence. They on the elevator with Jermaine Jackson and his wife Hazel, y'all. After traveling from the 18th floor with a few additional stops and travelers joining our journey, the elevator finally stopped on the 5th floor, and the Jacksons got off and were gone as quickly as they had appeared. Jody, me, and other elevator occupants continued downwards, stopping floor after floor until we finally arrived at the lobby. The elevator doors opened and everyone exited. And at that moment, Jody and I were suddenly face to face with a rude awakening and a more than probable lost opportunity. But without a second thought, we recovered and prepared to make up for our temporary duh moment by repeatedly pushing every button in sight, hoping for an up elevator without one word between us. We knew we had to try to catch the Jackson couple to follow through with what we came to Hollywood to do and watch the magic happen from that point. We stepped into the elevator praying we would catch them. And like in a fairy tale, we stepped out into a whole new world. Now, our trip back up was no easy effort either. Back on with the few new occupants, this same elevator finally began to rise. Jody and I feverishly pushed the button for the 5th floor until we finally reached our destination. And we jumped out and ran down this long corridor, seeing signs on the wall pointing to the parking structure exit. Upon arriving to the exit door just outside, we saw Jermaine and Hazel stopped, sitting in their car as if waiting on Jody and me to come running through the door with cassette in hand. Jermaine was in the driver's seat, initially looking down inside the car for something. And when they saw us running towards them, instead of showing fear, he lowered his window as he and Hazel smiled to welcome us. Isn't that special? They didn't roll up their window. They saw them coming and they rolled their window down, smiling. Oh, that's nice, don't you think? I've always been sure of myself and never recall myself stuttering before. However, after a brief hi, I'm Greg and I'm Jody, I tried to talk, but stutter is all that would come out. We don't want to take too much of your time, but we got this tape and we want you to listen to it, I said. To my surprise, Jermaine stuttered back. You right on time. I just stopped here to look for a tape to play. And totally caught by surprise to hear Jermaine Jackson stuttering for the first time, I somehow spoke clearly this time. Who knew Jermaine Jackson stuttered? Did any of you all know that? I had no idea. Out of all the shit I read about them, and as many times I heard Jermaine Jackson speaking, I never heard him stutter. The fuck was his problem? But then again, he had enough money to go to speech therapy and correct that shit. It's probably why we don't hear him stutter anymore. Stutter. My nigga. This eggnog and rum is good, y'all. All right. Well, will you give this a listen? I said, giving Jermaine the tape. We know you're going to like it, Joni chimed in as I came back with, it's new music by our new band. Here's a number where we can be reached. Oh, okay. I'll listen to it, Jermaine said. And he took the tape, shook both of our hands. He and Hazel still warm and smiling. So all of us said our goodbyes as they began listening to the tape. Brown to the tape, Brown drove off in their new brown Rolls Royce. I'm going to read it just how it was written. That ain't me stumbling because I'm drinking eggnog and rum. I'm going to read it again because that's what it says. He took the tape, shook both of our hands. He and Hazel still warm and smiling. So all of us said our goodbyes. As they began listening to the tape, Brown drove off in their new brown Rolls Royce. That's one long run-on sentence, and there's plenty of run-on sentences in this book. But I just read that how it was written. As Jody and I watched them drive away, he blurted, "Hey, Greg, you know we just gave him our only tape?" It then dawned on me, too, we had given up our one tape without a second thought. Yeah, man, but you know we had to do that. We couldn't miss that moment. Yeah, I agree. This is so exciting, ain't it? Said Jody. Yes, we were floating, hoping, praying, thanking God, and believing something wonderful had happened to our lives this day, and we were right. Man, what started out so crazy turned out so right. And after we made it back to the first floor and out onto the street, we headed west on Sunset towards home with a stop on the way to get something to eat with the $20 Mr. Lawson had loaned us. And by now, we had forgotten all about our visit at RCA Records. Still full of adrenaline, excitement, and serious hunger, we found a little cheap coffee shop down on Vine Street and went in. This place was small but clean with a few customers inside. So Jody and I went in, ordered our food, and talked about this insane day we had been living. We must have spent hours there talking and reordering coffee because when we finally looked up, it was now dark outside. So we paid our check and continued to dream about what might be next as we headed back to Darnell and Linda's. And when we got there, without taking time to catch our breath, we immediately filled Darnell in on our crazy day. We talked about the possibility of Jermaine and Hazel calling us back till bedtime. And after Pink rolling up our hair, it was Jody's turn to sleep on the couch. So I took the floor. But tonight, it was really cool because I somehow knew it won't be long now. Upon waking up the next morning, I sensed a promising day ahead. With Darnell and Linda off to work, I, then Jody, awoke to get cleaned up and start our new normal Hollywood day. From yesterday's thoughts, we began discussing who we should try to see today until it hit us like a ton of bricks. Hell, we don't have a tape. I guess that whole thing with meeting Jermaine Jackson of the Jackson 5 and his real pregnant wife, Hazel Gordy Jackson, Berry Gordy's daughter, really happened yesterday, huh, Greg? Jody asked. The two of us shared a giant, hopeful laugh as in disbelief, and we began a total playback of the events of our yesterday. And as the sunlight had left for the day, another Cali winter night was upon us. So, with the few dollars we had bummed off of Kirk Lawson, we decided we'd walk down on Santa Monica Boulevard and grab a bite. As we were ready and about to leave, the phone rang, so I answered it. Hello, can I speak to Greg and Jody? Yes, this is Greg, I said, hoping this call was from who I thought it was, and sure enough. Hi, it's Jermaine. How you guys? Before I could respond, he continued with, "Hey, Hazel, I like your guys' tape. The song called Can This Be is a smash." And as Jody was yelling hi to him from the phone, I was thanking him for liking our tape, although it says liking out tape. Liking our tape. Jermaine then asked, well, what you guys, what you up to? We're not up to anything, Jermaine. About to go out for something to eat, said Jody. My wife Hazel in labor, and I'm here waiting at the hospital. Do you guys want to come down here? Can you guys come down here so we could talk? I want to scream, hell yeah. But since he didn't know me, I decided to contain myself and ask, Where are you at? Jody and I will be there as soon as we can. Just tell us where it is. He told us Cedars-Sinai Hospital in West Hollywood, and that was all I needed to hear. So I told him that we would get there soon. After hanging up, Jody and I got the address of the hospital from Linda, called to get the correct bus route and directions, and hurried over there. And from Darnell and Linda's front door to the Cedars maternity lobby took us just short of an hour. And Jermaine was sitting in the waiting room alone watching the television. As soon as he saw us walk in, he stood up to shake our hands, looking very happy to see us. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming down here, he said. Hazel's in there having the baby, so the doctor sent me out here. We listened to your tape all the way home last night, and we like it. While we were still shaking hands, Jody and I thanked him for liking the tape, for calling us back, and for asking us to come and hang with him here at the hospital. Jermaine had this broad smile on his face and asked, what do y'all want me to do? If you can help us, we want a deal, Jody quickly blurted out. Hey, I'm starting a company in Motown called Young Folks. You guys can be our first act, okay? What do you want to guys call yourself? First Class, Jody proudly stated, to which I nodded in agreement. Yeah, First Class, that's our name, First Class. And from there, we talked for at least 2 hours. And as we got acquainted, we talked about birthdays, our ages, our zodiac sign, about the band, how we got to LA. And he told us a lot about Hazel and himself, his family, and more about Hazel's and his new venture. We'd been talking for a good while when Jackie, Tito, and Marlon arrived. Jermaine introduced us and told them we were part of a band he and Hazel might be working with. The brothers shook our hands and encouraged our working with their brother and his wife as our conversation grew branches. I remember how elated I was because these were the coolest people I'd ever met. Not that I'd ever been starstruck, but here I was spending time with 4/5 of the world-famous Jackson 5. And true to their public image, they were nice and down-to-earth folks. That couldn't be me, y'all, at that time. No way I could be sitting in the waiting room with Jermaine, Tito, Marlon, and who else came with him? Yeah, and Jackie. I wouldn't have gave a fuck about them. I've been asking them the whole time, where's Michael? Is Michael coming? Is he here yet? Can you call Michael and tell Michael to come? Fuck you niggas. Where's Michael? That'd have been me. But anyway, I digress. After a while, Jody and I tried to leave, feeling this was a family moment, but they engaged us even more. And within an hour of their arrival, Michael and Randy arrived, and they too joined the conversation. Oh my Lord, Michael Jackson had arrived in the waiting room. I'd have fell out, passed out right on the floor. Anyway, soon after that, Jody and I excused ourselves, and we all shook hands and said goodbye. Once back on the street, Jody and I jumped in the air screaming and danced all the way to Darnell and Linda's home where we were staying. I had taken for granted that Darnell would be with us in the new band, but I soon learned otherwise. Darnell and Linda both worked days, so he didn't really have the time to hang out with Jody and me. So when we finally made the time to discuss things further, we sat down and put him up on where things were at and going. And as everything had been said, Darnell shared his concerns about Motown's negative reputation and said how he wouldn't want to put his musical career in their hands should they offer a deal. I immediately understood and accepted what he was saying because all of us had heard the negative stories about Motown throughout the years. But personally, I never bought into the rumor in any walk of life and didn't seek out Motown for a deal. But the way this chance meeting occurred, I knew it was an act of God and a possibility that I wasn't about to walk away from. My faith and optimism were in control, and I can only see the win in signing with this company. Before now, I had never considered Motown in my dreams of having a record deal. I can't say I had not considered it because of the negative things I had heard or because I considered it out of reach. Anyway, Darnell then told us that Byrne had contacted him and asked him to be the leader of a band, Hot Ice. And under that name, he would sign a deal with Polygram Records Germany and release the White Heat / TNT flasher recordings that I had suggested he pay for and take from the studio shelf in Ohio. So right now there's a picture. It looks like the album cover of Hot Ice in 1977. And the title says Paul Mall Groove. But there's a face here, right? So picture a mouth with just the top row of teeth showing. So there's a mouth there, but that same mouth is also in place of each eye. And then there's a nose. Weird picture. Anyway, I just decided to describe that to you. I then agreed to go back into the studio with Jody, Darnell, and Byrne to finish production on that material. Even though I accepted Darnell's pass on Motown and subsequently switched, I was somewhat hurt and disappointed because after basically growing up together, being in local bands, being college roommates, and his getting me into TNT flashes / White Heat, I always knew Darnell and I would make it in music together. And although not Mansfield from the start of this new band, I knew once I had gotten things off the ground, he would be a part of it. See, from what I knew, he and I were like minds when it came to diligence, responsibility, and over leadership. I knew that we would be at each other's side, but I would soon come to learn that even the best laid plans are subject to change, especially when there are elements beyond your control. Having not spoken to the guys since the day we arrived nearly 2 weeks ago, Jody and I placed a call to them back in Ohio, but the phone had been disconnected. We tried to reach Arie, but there was no answer at his home either. So I made a call to the Ingram home to find that Philip was there. And once he came to the phone, I told him about our meeting Jermaine and how we had given him our tape. And again, I assured Philip that we were going to get a deal. I was surprised when Philip told me that after they had run out of food and the heat in the house was about to be shut off, MC had gone back to Grand Rapids while he and Tommy had come to Akron a couple of days earlier and would be living with his family while I worked things out in LA. And although Bunny and Muttley volunteered to come to Mansfield and take Tommy back to Grand Rapids, he told them no. He had told Philip much about his home life, including about the physical, sexual, and emotional abuse he suffered for years and how he really didn't want to go back there. So Philip asked his parents if Tommy could stay with them for a little while till I called for both of them. And they kindly agreed after telling Tommy that he would have to be responsible and work for his keep, just like Philip would. Once again, I was appreciative for the Ingrams. Philip yelled for Tommy to pick up the downstairs phone so Jody and I could talk with both of them. Pardon me while I take a sip. Eggnog and rum, y'all. My nigga. Ooh, this is good. While waiting for Tommy to pick up, Philip added, "Hey, Greg, Eddie is out of the hospital and ready to come, but there's no change in Reggie's condition." I chimed in, "That's good news about Eddie. Let me have his number and the hospital number for Reggie if he's allowed to accept calls, and I'll call both of them. To which he did, as Tommy happily picked up the phone and joined in the chat. Tommy immediately started stuttering like Arie, to which all of us burst out in laughter. I jokingly scolded Tommy for doing that, and Jody got in asking how Tommy was holding up and repeating what we had just told Philip. And when we then told them that they could get ready to come soon, said our last, and hung up the phone. We then called MC, who had been back in Grand Rapids for a week or so and had gotten back into his old routine of waiting my call. Once he answered the phone, not knowing who was calling, I asked, laughing, "You ready to roll, Baba?" "Hey, baby, I've been waiting for this call. I don't care what you got, just get me out of this motherfucker," he laughed. "Help is on the way, MC. Jody and I met with Jermaine Jackson today, and I know something's about to happen, so hold on a little longer." After MC proceeded to tell me what was happening on the Grand Rapids music scene and complain about being buried in waist-high snow, we confirmed again that he and the others would soon be joining us in Hollywood, and we got off the phone. Jody and I couldn't sit still from excitement and happiness. We went back out and walked around Hollywood, elated over the fact that this shit is real. And we were about to close a record deal that I told the fellas I'd get in 2 weeks. And after a while, we decided to return home for the night. After a couple of weeks back in LA, Jody and I connected with Bernd when he came by Darnell and Linda's apartment. Unknown to Jody and me, the two had reconnected soon after he left us in Mansfield. Initially, I was a little apprehensive after our last scene, but Byrne quickly made excuses for how he acted, but they carried no truth whatsoever. After seeing Jody and I weren't having it, he apologized for how he dealt with us and tried to laugh off his poor handling of our business. And after a minute or so of watching him squirm, we forgave him anyway, knowing that we would never work together as artist and manager or any other business capacity again. After that, he acted as if everything was okay and asked Jody and me to work with him. Darnell and then noted studio engineer Roger Dollahide to complete, I'm reading it just how it's written, y'all, overdubs and mixing of the White Heat throwaways for release in Germany and all of Europe under the name Hot Ice. In our wanting to help make Darnell's and Burns' project successful, Jody, Tommy, Philip, MC, and I would dive in to help, cleaning up, adding, and producing this music also. Jody and I shocked Byrne by telling him about our then pending deal with Motown. I recall his, Rogers, and even Darnell's thoughts and input was so negative. Both Jody and I asked them to shut the fuck up because they didn't know what they were talking about when it came to our relationship with Jermaine and Hazel and our level of communication with Motown. From that point on, although we would never do any business with Byrne and intentionally kept hanging with him down to a minimum, we forgave him and went back to our friendship. And together we completed the project. Byrne had the songs mastered and including a couple of deals for the same masters. He now, some 30 years later, has them on the internet as Smash, and he has a website full of lies, misplaced ego, and misinformation about how he started it all. What a fucking joke. Although the new band, which we were by now calling First Class, was totally excited and committed to our pending deal with Motown, Jermaine and Hazel, all members would put their heart and soul into completing the Hot Ice project since we knew that it too would represent us should it ever see the light of day as an American release, as well as what Byrne planned to do in Germany. But again, Motown and whatever they asked of us came first. Jody and I were given permission by Motown to use the phones anytime and get free albums from the mailroom and other miscellaneous minor privileges. We began to tactfully take advantage of them all by placing our first call to the guys in Ohio. Philip answered the phone and we told him about our meeting Jermaine, how we had given him our tape and that we met with him again the next day. And again, I assured Philip that we were getting a deal with Motown and he, Tommy, Arie, and MC would be coming to California soon. Philip then added, Greg, Eddie's been cleared by his doctors and is ready to come, but there's no change in Reggie's condition. I then let him know, per our conversations with Jermaine and Hazel, that things should begin to move fast from here and bus tickets would be sent soon. To get things rolling, Jermaine and Hazel informed Jody and me that their next move would be to introduce us to the representatives of Motown's business and creative department. The following day, we got a call from Lee Young Jr., Motown's head of legal, who invited Jody and me to have lunch with him and Skip Miller. It was clear that Lee and Skip wanted us to be impressed and a little psyched out because the extended invitation was for us to meet them at the world-famous Brown Derby restaurant on Vine off of Hollywood Boulevard at 1 p.m. the next day. This would be our first time meeting Lee and Skip, and little did any of us know at the time that they would both be directly involved with our career in one way, shape, or form from our beginning to our end at Motown. And I'm proud to say, despite the ups and downs of my years at Motown, I consider both to be my good friends. Well, it's nice to embark on an endeavor and end up with, a friend or two. Not just acquaintances or people you know. I'm talking about a friend. It's good to have a friend. It's good to be a friend. I thank God for my friends. I love my friends. How many real friends do you have? And do you love them? Well, if you do, when this live is over, hang up and call your friend and let them know how much you care. Hi. This lunch meeting was to begin shortly after beverages were ordered, so Jody and I again ordered our new favorite drink, Chivas Regal with Coca-Cola back, which Lee and Skip found funny, while both discreetly tried to hold back their individual laughter. Once they ordered their drinks, they informed the waiter we would need a few minutes, so he disappeared. Feeling a little apprehensive, not wanting to look stupid or be the butt of a joke, before anything else could be said, I sincerely asked, is there something wrong? Did we order a bad drink or something? No, not at all, Lee quickly interjected with a chuckle. It's just that real Scotch drinkers usually have their drink either neat on the rocks with a Perrier, club soda, or water back, but usually never with Coke. Then Skip also laughed, followed by me and Jody. From that point, I knew that and believed that Jody, I'm reading it like it's written. From that point, I knew that and believe that Jody never ordered and or drank Chivas and Coke back again. After that icebreaker, the conversation moved right along with a lot of questions and answers by everyone at the table. The feeling of coming off unsophisticated hung with me throughout that meeting, mostly because it's the truth, but the mutual exchange continued and a lot was learned by Jody and me that afternoon. As with most new things we'd pick up, we would spend hours discussing and analyzing all once we got to ourselves. Of the various important issues and concerns discussed, it turned out that as part of our deal, Motown would want to have ownership of our master, which our demo songs were on. We learned that this was a common practice with most new artist signings and with most record companies. This is done to make sure that the artist or no one other than the record company has possession and or rights to legally manufacture and release product on the newly signed artist. Product that could compete with, interfere, or disrupt the record company's control of the artist and subsequent releases. It was also questioned and suggested that Jody and I be given artist, songwriter, and producer contracts, then create our own production company where we could sign the rest of the group to us. And if we chose, we can give them money from the advance we received. Not totally understanding all of the ramifications of making this type of deal, but hell-bent on not alienating or becoming superior to any of the fellows I had pulled together to make this unit. I quickly stated for the record, no, I pass on that suggestion. All of our band members, we're in this together. From where I stand, that's how it would be from beginning till end. To which Jody stood in agreement, stating, that's how it's got to be with us. So with that, the four of us at the table moved on and began to discuss the various steps that need to be taken so the band can get to LA and prepare to do a showcase presentation for various Motown executives and some staff before they would decide to sign first class to Motown. Once it was decided to move things forward at the urging of Jermaine and Hazel, at Motown's urging and expense, they moved Jody and me into the Holiday Inn on Highland Avenue in Hollywood, allocated us weekly per diems, and sent bus tickets to all of the other band members to journey to LA. Ooh-wee. Let's see. All right. 23. Okay. How about we just take a little break? Let's hear a song. And then I'll be back to read some more. I've been reading straight through. Here's a nice little song for you.
Trying your best to bring the water to your eyes.
Man, they used to jam back in the day, didn't they? All right. Hmm. All right, here we go. With things beginning to pick up for us, Jody decided he should take time to return to Youngstown, relocate his wife and young son to California, while plans were being made for the other band members to join us out here. While waiting for the guys to finally arrive and the showcase to happen, Jermaine and I started hanging more frequently. His main protege at that time was Michael McGlory, and they were together much of the time working on music for Jermaine's forthcoming solo album. So he would sometimes pick me up, or I would meet them at the studio since it was also located in Hollywood, not too far from my hotel, or up at his and Hazel's office in the Motown building, where the three of us would laugh, talk, get to know each other, and most importantly, write songs together. Even though Jermaine was busy and more often than not playful, I sensed certain loneliness in Jermaine. His brothers had left Motown in 1976, and although he had contact and even got to see them from time to time during that period, the close bond was obviously broken due to the different paths they were on now. I picked up he missed the camaraderie of his brothers, and McGlory and I, and later Switch, somewhat filled the void. At that time, Jermaine had no idea what fun and craziness he was in for once he started hanging with the fellas who would soon become known as Switch. A week or so after checking into the Holiday Inn, I met Lenny Williams, ex-lead singer for Tower of Power. Y'all know who Lenny Williams is, right? He's that one that's saying, "'Cause I love you." Oh, 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 oh. Yeah, that nigga. You know what? I don't like people named Lenny. If I was a serial killer, I'd have a bunch of dead Lennys buried in my backyard. Anyway, Lenny was also at the Holiday Inn as a guest of Motown while negotiating and about to sign his deal with the label. Lenny and I became instant friends and later introduced him to my bandmates upon their arrival to LA. Between Motown making the travel and lodging arrangements and the fellas being notified and preparing, it was about 2 weeks before they all arrived. While on hold, I repeatedly called Arie to fill him in and get him on the next bus. I hadn't caught up with him yet, but I didn't think he was avoiding my calls. I just thought he was busy. And I didn't have a way to leave a number for him to call me back. So I kept calling Ohio again and again. And after more than a week of calling, I finally did reach Arie real late one night, waking him up. "Arie, what's happening, man? I've been calling you all week. Like I promised, we got a deal, man." Arie was quiet, so I continued. "Man, we're going to have a deal with Motown. They're sending bus tickets for all of you to come out here so we could do a showcase and get signed." I heard Arie breathe heavily into the phone, but still saying nothing. I thought he was trying to get his thoughts together to keep from stuttering. "That's some good news, Greg. I'm happy for you guys, but Sue and I talked about it and I'm not coming." "But Arie, we got the deal, man. I've been hanging with Jermaine Jackson from the Jackson 5, man, and Motown wouldn't be sending you tickets if they weren't serious." I, 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 I can't come. I'm sorry, Greg, but I'm not coming. Okay. Okay, Arie. I got it. But you're really losing out. You take care, man. I hung up the phone. I didn't understand what I was hearing, what I had to accept. Here, I had basically built this group around Arnie's life, moving to Mansfield because it was Arnie's hometown, and so he wouldn't have to leave his family or drive up and down the Ohio freeways and all of that snow, ice, and bitter cold, writing songs that would fit his voice and style of keyboard playing, catering to his schedule for band and vocal rehearsals. This dirty motherfucker, I thought to myself once it set in that he really wasn't coming. He could have told me this shit before I left Ohio. Chasing his dream saved me the grief that was now staring me in the face. In my mind, Arnie's refusal to come put me in the worst dilemma I'd ever faced. We now had a pending contract with Motown and no lead vocalist. I'd written songs and molded the band for multiple vocalists with someone who could sing in a high falsetto and do duos with Philip, and now I had no one. The one option I had presented something I didn't want to deal with: pain, chaos, and destruction. So Jody and I pondered over what could be done if Arnie didn't change his mind, which actually he never did. Well, just as Byrne tried to sway me to get Jody when we found out that Bruce could no longer be with the band, Jody tried to sway me to get Bobby to fill Arnie's void. I resisted, but the fact remained that something had to be done now. I was totally confident that no matter what, we could get a deal elsewhere, but I wasn't about to let this opportunity, this bird in the hand, just slip through our hands because Arnie wouldn't come. Although he had been very important in the beginning, I could not allow him to fuck this up for the rest of us. A serious decision had to be made because Motown would want to hear the band soon after they arrived, so there was little time to try to figure something out. What a fucking dilemma then, right? It's always something. Nothing just ever runs smooth. That's why I hate doing shit with a group of people, because everybody got their own personality, their own ideas and concepts, and it just be a bunch of bullshit. It just brings me back to Rodney King. Can't we all just get along? The fuck? This dilemma rarely left my mind. The more I considered calling Bobby, the more I thought more than likely he would fuck things up. But maybe, just maybe, before the band was strong enough to stand on its own name and I had become a record producer, well, I'm pausing because that was written very strange. I need to go back and read that again. I'm going to read it a little bit more slowly. This dilemma rarely left my mind. The more I considered calling Bobby, the more I thought, more than likely, he would fuck things up. But maybe, just maybe not, before the band was strong enough to stand on its own name and I had become a record producer. Okay, that was my fault. I was reading it wrong. Well, Bobby was my brother and he too deserved this shot. But again, and most important, the thought of losing this deal with Motown was too much. So it outweighed the fact that I wanted life free of Bobby DeBarge's fucked up issues. Then and there, I decided to bite the bullet and let it do what it does. After sharing my thoughts with Jody, understanding there might be major problems, he was excited about the thought of Bobby joining us. And even though he knew Bobby could be and had been a handful to my knowledge, he had no idea of the extent of psychological damage that had festered inside of him. He had no real idea, as I had, that Bobby's drug use was way beyond an escape or cry for help, but more another few miles down his inevitable road to self-destruction. With the exception of Jody's return, Now the fellas were here in LA and settling into the Holiday Inn where Motown had put us up. I waited a few days till everyone was situated and getting past the awestruck maze of actually being in Hollywood. One afternoon, I called all the guys in the room except Tommy, who was talking on the phone to his family in Michigan because I told him my decision first. Once Jody, MC, Eddie, and Philip were in my room, I began with, guys, Arnie's not coming. I called him when I called you guys in various times since, only to be told that he can't come and I'm left with no choice. So I'm going to call Bobby DeBarge and see if he can come. They did not know the extent of my reluctance and concerns, but they did know that I had some kind of problem with what I had decided to do. Eddie did not even know Bobby at that time, but Philip and MC certainly did. Since MC came to LA from Grand Rapids, I asked had he seen Bobby before he left. He said he hadn't, but he knew from mutual friends that Bobby was strung out on heroin. I loved Bobby, and I wanted to help him, share this dream with him once again, and to laugh and talk and even cry like we used to. But the thing that I didn't want, which I knew had come with him, were the demons that haunted him, those that were imposed on him during infancy and would dwell inside till the day he died. I was also worried what influence he was going to have on Tommy, who didn't have enough sense or concern to be scared. In my knowing much more than I wanted to about the sexual deviance which existed in the family and largely perpetrated on the brothers by Bobby, I was definitely concerned. I'm going to read that again. In my knowing much more than I wanted to about the sexual deviance which existed in the family and largely perpetrated on the brothers by Bobby, I was definitely concerned. And yet, due to the reality of the circumstances, I was helpless to deny him his role in this dream, knowing left to his own devices, he and he alone would turn this into a nightmare. Other than the weed that, with the exception of Philip, all of us smoked, everyone else in the group was solid and had no real bad habits. I was bringing someone with bad habits into the band because in the front of my mind, I had no choice, no other option. While waiting on the last member of our newly formed band to arrive, bond, and move forward with us. I showed the guys around our Hollywood surroundings, my favorite haunts, and where the good, cheap food was. A few of the fellas had friends and or relatives here in California, but we waited a while to make contact and invite folks up to the hotel. So when we weren't with Jermaine and Hazel or helping Burn with the Hot Ice Project, we would just hang together. We would walk around Hollywood, make new friends, and meet girls who would frequently end up in our hotel rooms and beds. And of the earliest visitors, I remember when I met James Ingram for the first time, when he drove up to see his baby brother Philip. James had been living here in LA for a few years, now having packed up his wife and child and moved from Akron with his then band, Revelation Funk. In talking with James, I was informed that at that time, the band members had since gone their separate ways and that he was currently playing keyboards in sessions. That was the MD for Ray Charles, James Ingram. He just recently passed in the past 2 years or so. James Ingram. He did duets with Patty Austin. He wrote Michael Jackson song "Pretty Young Thing" from the album, and he had this fly ass hit in the '80s called "Always." I love you always. Can't believe my life. Yeah. 5 days later, Bobby arrived on the Greyhound. So MC, Tommy, and I trekked down to the Hollywood station to pick him up. The second he stepped off the bus, I said to myself, damn, looks like he's still trying to shake that shit. With one look, I surmised he'd probably been using for most of the trip and had probably run out of heroin on the last leg of his 5-day trip to Los Angeles. Because he was white as a sheet, he looked weak, and he was stinking of stale sweat and vomit. Once we got Bobby to the hotel, Jody, MC, Tommy, and I had to get him into the room, which he was to share with Tommy. It was clear he was still going through withdrawals because one minute he was cold, the next minute he was burning up. He also couldn't control his bowels and frequently vomited as nothing, including water, would stay on his stomach. Jesus Christ. So they get him off the bus, hot, cold, shitting, pissing, vomiting, and stinking. Talk about you, the lead singer of this group. We getting a record deal. Isn't that special? Bobby's first 48 hours in California were mostly spent in bed. As he got stronger, Jody, Tommy, MC, and I took care of him. Over much of these 4 or 5 days, the only thing that would settle Bobby's stomach was Coca-Cola and bread, until finally he was able to walk around and go outside. As he healed, the only real difficulty with Bobby's situation was we had to keep Jermaine from coming by the hotel to meet Bobby until he was through kicking his heroin addiction. Although Hazel was preoccupied with being a new mom, among other things, per the past few months, Jermaine wanted to hang with us, and he would call and ask questions like, oh, what you guys doing? When will y'all be ready to begin rehearsals for the showcase for Motown? And don't you guys want to go do something? Oh, Jermaine needed friends. All his life, his brothers had been his friends, you know. After giving him excuses for a week, we told Jermaine we were ready to get to work. And the next day, someone from SIR, aka Studio Instrument Rentals Rehearsal and Showcase Studios, called me at the hotel. This person and I talked for a short while until we had locked in a rehearsal schedule for the band to prepare for the forthcoming showcase with Motown. Starting with that next afternoon, we rehearsed daily for 2 weeks, primarily teaching Bobby the new songs from the demo, which got us in with Jermaine, Hazel, and Motown. We also finished and added 2 of Bobby's original ideas, since Bobby, Jody, and I had already recorded and performed this song with White Heat. We also included Stevie Wonder's I Love Everything About You to showcase Bobby's full range. Since everyone, including Jermaine and Hazel, was totally comfortable working at SIR, it was decided that our showcase would also take place there in a much bigger room for the following week. Now, since we were also getting per diems, Jody and I suggested that all of us run out and pick up new clothes for this maiden performance. And on the day before, the 7 band members got a late start, but walked up and down Hollywood Boulevard from one end to the other, Vine to Highland, and back again to shop for cheap clothes to wear in our performance. After a bit of walking and shopping, Tommy yelled out, I'm hungry. Can we stop and get something to eat? As if in practice unison, everyone chimed in. So we walked a little longer and found a little cheap coffee shop down on Vine Street, and we all went in. This place was small but clean, with a few customers inside, so we figured it should be cool and we wouldn't have to wait long to be served. Once inside, the only waitress met us at the door with menus in hand and showed us to seating which would accommodate all of us. She proceeded to pass out menus and asked, "Do you fellas want coffee?" This lady, who was dressed in a wrinkled black and white waitress uniform, was short with stringy black hair and had possibly a Korean Japanese accent and spoke severely broken English so badly we barely understood her when asked, "You want order now?" I'm sure most of us had a puzzled look on our face because she moved in a little closer to us, raised her voice as if we had a hearing problem, and continued to ask, "Order! You want order now?" Finally, catching on to what she was saying, we signaled for her to give us a minute as we began looking through the menus. Again, she headed towards the kitchen and continued her conversation in a foreign language with whomever she had been speaking with when we walked in. Being hungry for real, it didn't take any of us long to decide what we wanted, so Jody attempted to hail the waitress to come back. She was looking in our direction but continued her conversation. Finally, after our healing for her to come to our table a few more times, she arrives and again asks, "You want order now?" Had she not asked this question before, none of us would have understood what the hell she had just said. And trust me, ordering our food became a United Nations summit, as her broken English, her funky attitude, on top of her limited understanding to our repeated explanation as to what and how we wanted our food cooked. This took more time than expected before she finally said okay and headed to the kitchen. After feeling our orders were finally understood and provided to the cook, we began to share and discuss some of the things we had found while on this shopping exploration. After a few minutes, our waitress returned with our food, and as soon as it hit the table, I tore into my cheeseburger and onion rings, and everyone began eating what was delivered. And before letting the waitress walk away, Jody looked up from his food. "This fish sandwich is burned," he declared to the waitress. Although she was in sight standing by the kitchen door talking to someone, she could clearly see Jody trying to get her, but took her time anyway. And when she finally made her way to our table, Jody repeatedly tried to explain that his food was burned as she kept asking, "What? What?" as if she didn't understand. He finally said in a stern voice, "My sandwich is burned. Can you take it back and bring me one that isn't burned?" Again, she said, "What? What?" Seriously hungry and frustrated, Jody said, "Look, lady, I can't eat this. I want another sandwich." She then looked at the sandwich, looked towards the kitchen, looked at Jody, and said something in her language. And again, Jody with a serious attitude. "This you ordered," in turn she stated angrily. "I didn't order no burned fish sandwich, lady." In a real loud, nasty tone, she yells at Jody, "This you ordered! This you ordered!" Jody looked at me and said, "Man, this is really fucked up." The waitress then gets frantic and starts pacing and waving her arms in the air, yelling at Jody in that horribly broken language. "Fuck me! Fuck you! Fuck your mother!" Jody gets real mad and then breaks out laughing at what she said. As Jody puts both hands firmly on the table and attempts to rise, she continues to yell at the kitchen and then back at Jody in her native tongue for a few times. While all this is going on, out of the corner of his eye, MC sees this huge Asian guy in a nasty looking apron and a dirty chef's cap coming out of the kitchen waving a big meat cleaver. As it appears he's coming our way, MC stands and all but screams at all of us, "We gotta go, y'all. We gotta go. Look at this motherfucker. Look." All of our heads turn in time to see this big, dirty, 400-pound cook coming out of the kitchen, heading our way with this big-ass meat cleaver raised high over his head like he's about to chop the head off a chicken. Everybody in the place stands as we damn near trample over one another. And that little bad English speaking waitress, as we try to get to the door and get the hell out of there. Needless to say, we didn't get to finish eating in that place, but we didn't have to pay for the food we didn't get to eat either. Once outside the restaurant and totally clear of that situation, we made our way back to the hotel restaurant. Over the next couple of days, we were seriously worked and did our thing, preparing for what would be for Bobby, Jody, Philip, Tommy, Eddie, MC, and myself, the most important performance of our lives. Meanwhile, Jermaine and Hazel had done their due diligence by researching the name First Class. So collectively, we, along with Jermaine and Hazel, had put a lot of work in preparation for our new, soon-to-be unreal life. All right. Whew. How y'all enjoying this reading so far? Just need to take a break for a minute or two. Not gonna play a song. Just need to sip something and, breathe a little bit. Everybody doing good on this Sunday morning? I read a comment. Somebody said, do more political videos, Madam Whip ass. Hell no. That man y'all voted for, Donald Trump, is going to be sworn into office again tomorrow. I have created my own bubble that I have been living in since election day, and I will be living in this bubble for the next 4 years. I do not read anything about politics, especially Donald Trump. I don't give a fuck what's going on in the White House. I don't give a fuck who he is offending. I don't give a fuck if he sits National Guard on every nigga in the United States. I don't give a fuck what Donald Trump does. I don't give a fuck if he's going to reinstitute slavery in America. I don't give a fuck. Now, we've asked, if he's going to reinstitute slavery in America, how's it that you don't give a fuck? I don't give a fuck. I didn't vote for him, and I ain't going to be nobody's motherfucking slave anyway. I got plans. Fuck you motherfuckers. If people can be born a man and grow up and tell you that they are now a woman and address them as she and her, or one singular person can tell you that they are more than one person and address them as them, we, and us, fuck you motherfuckers. Madam Whip ass is now a white woman. You cannot enslave a white woman. I am a blue-eyed, blonde-haired white woman. Fuck you motherfuckers. I'm a white woman. I'm not black. I'm Madam Whip ass, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman. Respect me and address me as such. Anyway, I'm getting back to this book. Where was I? Oh, okay. Meanwhile, Jermaine and Hazel had done their due diligence by researching the name First Class. So collectively, we, along with Jermaine and Hazel, had to put a lot of work in preparation for our new, soon-to-be unreal life. Oh, I read that already. Finally, it's showtime. And as the fellas and I take the stage, we look out into the audience to see too many of the Motown stars and dignitaries, including Berry Gordy, Smokey Robinson, Berry's sisters, Gwen Gordy Fuqua, and Anna Gordy Gay, his brothers, Robert and Fuller Gordy, and his niece, Iris Gordy, along with producers Jeffrey Bowen and Hal Davis, Billy Davis, Greg Wright, and a lot of others whose names and faces I knew well from album covers, liner notes, magazines, television shows, and other press outlets. I had devoured over my years of studying the who, what, when, and where of my destined profession. And as I glanced around, I saw that also in attendance was then Motown president Barney Alice, executives Suzanne DePass, Suzanne Colston, and Tony Jones, whom I had already met with Jermaine, head of marketing, Skip Miller, head of sales division, Miller London, and others known to us. I knew I must be in record business heaven. As with the exception of the specific names and faces I now found myself surrounded by, I had dreamed this dream many times throughout my life. Well, it was time to get this party started, and once we hit that first song, I forgot about all the folks and concentrated on the music. We heard applause and shouts of "yeah" as we played, sang, performed, and transitioned from one song, one lead vocalist, one instrument, and one place on stage to another. My band was the shit, and I knew it. We kicked ass, and we knew it. And when the complete performance was finished, they gave us a standing ovation. Mr. Gordy was the first to approach us, and the room got quiet as soon as he opened his mouth. Hazel and Jermaine said you guys were good, but I never imagined you were this good. Your show was really exciting. We've got some work to do, but you guys make it look easy, so I'm sure we'll make things happen. Welcome to Motown. Susan DePass chiming in right after Mr. Gordy. You guys are great. I never seen so much switching in my life, referring to how each of us changed from one instrument to another to vocals effortlessly. You guys are amazing, beautiful songs and great lyrics were among the various compliments and comments we received from many of the guests who were introduced or introduced themselves to us after Mr. Gordy spoke to all of us. We had finally the moment we waited. I'm reading it like it's written. We had finally the moment we waited and worked for since Jody and I spent that evening with Jermaine pacing the halls of the hospital while Hazel lay in labor. The moment that I was totally confident would come from since the day I sat on my mom's front steps and created the group that would become known as Switch. Yes, we had successfully made that big step and were finally moving forward in a big way, meeting, greeting, and shaking hands of Motown's founder, creative family, and other dignitaries had each band member on a high. Yet I could not wait to get back to just the 7 of us to revel in and savor our victory. Later, back in our hotel, everyone gathered in my room and we were reliving our awesome showcase. Among many other things, we also discussed the fact that we still did not have a name for the group. And just as Suzanne DePass's words resurfaced in my mind, I was not alone because suddenly I hear, "Did you all hear what Susan DePass said about us on us switching?" Jody asked. "Sure did," I jumped in. "And that's our new name." "What's our new name?" Johnny asked. "Switch," I proclaimed. "Yeah, sounds good to me." And everyone chimed in agreement, so that was that. We had a new name, a new opportunity, and we were all floating 10 feet off the ground. Over the next week or so, the band, or at least Philip, Tommy, Bobby, MC, Eddie, and I had time to just hang out and explore our surroundings while waiting on the contracts. And when they came, I, having learned to understand some contract language after the Barry White fiasco, took a deep breath and started trying to read one of the 3 thick artist, songwriter, and producer agreements, which all were between 19 and 24 pages long. Somewhat overwhelmed, I remember discussing with Jody the fact that we needed to find an attorney as soon as we could. While glancing over these documents and having little to no understanding of what they said, Jody and I made a plan to hit the streets the next day and take them to the only attorney we knew, Kirk Lawson. When we walked up to Mr. Lawson's office and asked his receptionist was he in, she called him and he actually came to the lobby. Saw Jody and me and made time to see us that day without an appointment. We chatted and updated him on what had occurred with us since our last encounter. And after scanning through the pages of the artist's agreement without really reading it, he pushed his chair back from his desk and proclaimed, "Gentlemen, I don't see where I get my money." Jody and I looked at each other stunned. We were both taken aback by Attorney Lawson's reaction. We had brought the contracts to him because we wanted to employ him, and all he could see was how he was supposed to get paid. He then tried to speak a little longer, explaining his position, but Jody and I were in sync and were thrown by his first thought. So we thanked him, told him we'd find out if Motown would advance us his fees, and left. Well, did y'all give him back his $20 he loaned y'all to eat? That's what I want to know. Needless to say, Kirk Johnson and an attorney whose sole priority was not so blatantly my money was the subject of the rest of the day. In my having come to know and befriend Kirk in the following years, I could see a possibly misunderstanding of his intent. But then my money was the last thing Jody and I wanted to hear, knowing that it should have been understood that our attorney would be paid for their services from the contractual advance. For some reason, when we returned to Motown offices the next day and we ran into Joy Santos, who was Jobete executive at the time and also girlfriend of my friend, Funkadelic member Billy Bass Nelson. Joy and I had met through Billy, so we struck up a conversation about my band being offered a deal with Motown. While sharing with her our encounter yesterday with Mr. Lawson, seeing our consternation, she waited until there was no one around and had us follow her to her office. We talked a little more, and she discreetly advised Jody and I on how ruthless and underhanded the record business, and more specifically, Motown, could be. She hammered the importance of our finding a strong attorney to get the very best for ourselves up front. Before we concluded, she handed me a piece of paper and said, "There is a good law firm called Cooper, Epstein, and Horowitz in Beverly Hills, who specializes in entertainment law. I know Jay Cooper, the head of the firm. He can help you. Give him a call right away." Thanking her, we called the office the next day, which was a Friday, and after saying Joy referred us, we were able to speak directly to Jay right away. After hearing us out, he said he'd be happy to meet with us and possibly take us on as clients. And then he requested that we bring the contracts with us, and he set an appointment for Jody and me to come in the following Monday. Jody and I made our way down to the prestigious offices of Cooper, Epstein, and Horowitz that following Monday morning. And after the receptionist confirmed our meeting with attorney Jay Cooper, she offered us refreshments as she showed us to a client waiting area from the main reception area. This was seriously a plush office suite. And after a few minutes, Mr. Cooper emerged with a young protege. He introduced himself as a young man beside him as Michael Byrne. He invited us to walk with them to his office. I remember after Jay's buildup, Jay came off as expected. After an exchange of proper greetings and my thorough explanation of why we were there, Jay got right down to business. He reintroduced Michael, explaining He is the firm's newest and brightest attorney, and if you guys have no objections, I want Michael to work with us since he actually cut his legal teeth on Motown contracts. He and Michael shared a light laugh. Jody and I, shaking our heads in agreement, yes, we're with it. Jay then said, then, gentlemen, I leave you in very capable hands. Of course, I'm here whenever you call. We all thanked Jay, and he exited the room. Michael again extended his hand and asked, shall we get to this? Definitely, Jody said, as I pushed the agreements towards Michael. He first picked through the stack and stopped to glance over the artist agreement, which was a thick 36-page document. As he read, Jody and I sat quietly sizing him up. I was pleasantly thrown off by his initial appearance. Michael was a young, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned white guy with an Eastern European look. He stood about 6'3" tall, a little taller than Jody and me, and he was wearing a plaid shirt, jeans with a thick brown leather belt, and very expensive, stunning pointed-toe alligator cowboy boots. When he spoke, his voice was basically soft-spoken, but his tone was firm and matter of fact as he began to explain to Jody and me the paragraphs in the terms of the artist's agreement. Of course, most of the contractual language was unclear to Jody's and my untrained ears, but I found after having a little study of contracts, the more I heard, the clearer things became. As Michael read on, he stopped to explain the reason there were 3 contracts. One was for our exclusive services as artists, another for songwriter, and the last for producer, and all members were to sign individually and collectively. Allowing a minute for Jody and me to ask questions and understand, he continued reading until he got to the paragraph which stated Motown shall have sole ownership of the group's name, and I abruptly interrupted him with, Michael, that's the one issue I dreaded would be in here. Is this such a problem for you, Greg? He asked. It most definitely is, Michael. Please explain your concerns, he said. We have to own the name. No matter what has to be done, it's just that simple, I said, not leaving room for anyone else to speak. We went through this with Barry White and White Heat, and I refuse to let it happen to me again, I explained, seeing an expression of concern come over his face. Greg, with Motown, I know this is going to be a tough one, as in most industry contracts. Record company ownership of an act's name is pretty standard, but let's see what we can do with that. Let me be frank with you, though. As I look at these agreements, they are created totally in favor of the record company with little benefit to you until you get a hit record. Among my concerns, Motown also wanted to collateralize your artist, songwriter, and producer contracts, he said. I know I looked puzzled because before I could ask, Michael continued to explain. Cross-collateralization means the artist, songwriter, and producer contracts are interconnected to the other and with reference to royalties are treated as one agreement. In other words, none of you will be paid one dime in royalties, if any are earned, until every cost incurred by you and on behalf of each group member as contracted artists, writers, or producers is paid back. Now, once you have a hit record, we can renegotiate this contract. But right now, they have you by the balls. I'll do what I can with things, including the name. You'll decide what you want to accept, and what's left we'll handle later. In today's record negotiations, to cross-collateralize, which is currently offered by most major labor deals, is called a 360 deal, whereby the record company signs the artist, then invests in the artist's musical and visual image or brand merchandising and live performances. This way, the company will recoup and earn income from all applicable artist, songwriter, producer, performance, and merchandising revenue. When Michael got back to us after a couple of days of dealing with Motown's legal department, among discussing all aspects of the contracts, he told me, Greg, they balked and flatly refused to negotiate ownership of the name. I abruptly responded, Michael, after what White Heat went through with the Barry White deal, I will not just give up my group's name to Motown or anyone else. So please tell them that I will go back to Grand Rapids and work in a factory before I give them ownership of this name. While Michael passed on my final response to Motown and waited for their comeback, Jermaine Hazel and Motown's legal department had shut off all communication with me and the group for the next 2 weeks, clearly waiting for me to break and change my mind. But that day did not come. Wow. He learned his lesson, and see, you got to understand, for those who may be listening to this in the future and you're young, maybe in your 20s, and you got dreams and goals, and so you're on this path, this journey to reach your dream, and along the way, you have experiences that just leave you with nothing but disappointment. I'm here to tell you today, count it all joy. Because just like the situation with Barry White and White Heat, it was good for Greg. Although it didn't feel good, didn't taste good, it was fucked up at the time he was going through it, but it happened to teach him a lesson. So at this point in time, when he's really signing with Motown, he is standing his ground. He knows better, but he would not have known better if he had not had that negative experience with Barry White / the White Heat group. That's why when you're trying to obtain something and you run into some obstacle, yes, it can be frustrating, but count it all joy and keep it moving on the path towards whatever that goal is you're trying to reach. Those obstacles are in the way to teach you something. Those obstacles are in the way possibly to block you from something. Those obstacles are in the way possibly to just delay something for a little while. Not deny, but delay. And whatever you go through and you come across an obstacle or something really fucked up, it happened for a reason. Look for the lesson and apply it to your life, to your skill set, or whatever it is that you're trying to do to achieve that particular goal, and keep it moving. Take it with you, because it's not going to do anything but help you. Am I talking right today? You don't have to tell me. I know I am. I'm right. I heard you. You right, Madam with Bass. Yeah, I'm right. I know I'm right. Okay. Where was I? When they finally got back to Michael, they agreed to let me keep the name, but I had to relinquish some of my other rights. Each member of Switch signed 5-year contracts as artists, writers, and producers, which included royalty advances enough to afford us bi-weekly salaries and pay all attorney fees. Now, what I'm about to read next is written in italics, in case you don't know. You know how when you have the word slanted to the right? So I'm going to read it, and I'll let you know when this italicized paragraph has ended. It says, some 6 or so months later, Michael Byrne went on a skiing vacation with his dad in the Sierras. They were caught in an avalanche and killed, leaving Switch without legal representation. I was sad for a time to come because although I hadn't known Michael long, in the short time we worked together, he gained my trust and convinced me he had Switch and more so my best interests at heart, which I have come to know is not a typical trait for a lawyer. I read that just how it's written. Michael listened and understood my every concern and later translated them into legal language with which we could confront the stack of contracts and ultimately Motown. End of italicized paragraph. By this evening's end, I still hadn't quite grasped the full extent of cross collateralization, but I did not let that get in the way because we would soon be Motown recording artists. Something that eluded me during the courting and signing period was the awe of my band actually being offered and ultimately signing with the great Motown Records, the current home of R&B pop legends Smokey Robinson, The Miracles, The Temptations, Diana Ross, The Supremes, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, among other great singers, bands, and performers. And let's not forget the hit producers like Jeffrey Bowen, Hal Davis, James Carmichael, Pam Sawyer, and others. Once Switch was signed, we also became part of an elite group of new recording artists, which I called Motown's Babies. This group of youngsters included Jermaine Jackson, Rick James, High Energy, Tina Marie, while also on the label were acts like the Commodores, the Dynamic Superiors, and a host of other acts, actually too many to mention, whom Motown signed and recorded, but for one reason or another, they never surfaced. For Switch, signing the contracts included an advance, which in our case was a sum of money allocated for each group member individually to cover personal and living expenses. Most record company signing advances were usually paid to the production company and or artists in a lump sum, but we were offered and accepted ours in form of bi-weekly salary checks paid out on the same schedule along with Motown employees and a few other signed artists. This process was really great for us and many artists who did not have accountants or someone with experience handling large sums of money to cover a lengthy period of time. Little did we know that this bi-weekly payment was as good as it would get for us during our stay at Motown, because then, and even after, we did not receive any royalties. To this day, we're still waiting for a royalty check. Well, damn. With me, there was also the looming fact of management and how we were coerced into signing a contract, which at the onset of a blatant conflict of interest. Yes, Jermaine and Hazel did bring Switch to Motown, so it's clear that without them, the Motown contract that we now know would not have existed. They also believed in and nurtured us in the beginning, and for that alone, they should have been and were well compensated. But starting from the time they were contracted and paid, the work was mostly absorbed by Motown as the company took over, making decisions as to what happened with and for the group, which ultimately stripped Switch of its rights to have management, which protected and stood up on our behalf and definitely stripped the group of the vast majority of the income, which should have come from record sales and concert performances. Fortunately, we endured and survived that injustice, also in effort to get to the next place. I began to see a pattern of compromise, which troubled me deeply. But my then rationale was, for my talent, for my dreams, this is not too big a price to pay. All right. That is the end of chapter 9. So listen, tomorrow's King's holiday. I will be back with chapter 10. Chapter 10 is a big, long, booty chapter. Jesus Christ. Probably 40 pages long. It's all right, though. There's only 17 chapters. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it sooner than later. And that, indeed, is a promise. And you know, I don't like to make promises. But we're going to get through it. And then my next book reading, ladies and gentlemen, y'all are going to enjoy this. It is 4 volumes. It is called Infallible. And the author is T.J. Spencer Jock. Infallible. When I get to it, this book was written for men, but so for some reason, women love the book. Ladies, you're going to want to be here for these readings. And I'm sure there's going to be a wealth of discussion in the chat room. Maybe not so much a chat room, but definitely in the comment sections. Because, let me just give you a little bit of information about the next book I will be reading. I'm just going to read what's on the back cover. Here's the challenge. If any of you in this room can quit your side bitch and remain faithful to one woman for 1 year, you will earn your share of $2 million. Sounds easy enough, right? Allow me to introduce Jarvis, Bayel, Rasta, Timothy, and Telly, 5 men who share one major flaw: an appetite for mistresses. Infallible is about 5 gamers in their late 30s who come together every Thursday night for a John Madden football tournament. This weekly event is hosted and narrated by an older guy they refer to as Uncle Glenn, the 6th member of the Madden night crew. Once Uncle Glenn's wife departs for her regular Thursday night shift, the crew arrives to smoke the most potent weed in New Orleans, roast each other into knee-slapping laughter, and swap strategies of how to cheat and not get caught. Uncle Glenn loves their company, even though he's happily married and faithful to his wife, Diana. Oh, and did I mention the weed? Oh my God, the weed. Infallible is all laughs and giggles until Diana discovers her husband is hanging out with 5 cheating, lying, creeping, baby-making, narcissistic assholes. That's when she tears her husband a new asshole. Uncle Glenn is left with a choice: quit his friends or challenge his friends to be infallible, to commit to one woman. This novel may require a warning label because the pages are abrasive and embedded with conversations that were never intended for female ears. Infallible also details the reactions of the unfortunate women who discover they have sister wives on the other side of town. This novel will make you laugh, piss you off, then make you care. It's not a boring recap of how men cheat. It's a pressure-intense scuba dive into why men cheat. You're invited to take a privileged peek into the lives of professional adulterers, pre-packaged for Hollywood. Y'all, let's get through Switch, Motown, DeBarge, and me. And then we're going to get to those series of books. Good shit, y'all. Good shit. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for joining me on this Sunday. Perhaps I'll be back later on tonight to read. Well, no, not tonight. Got something to do tonight. But definitely tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow. So I'll see you soon. Thanks again. Peace. Oh, wait. Oshu Drew. You got political and you didn't disappoint. You would get paid if you shared your political views. Your brutal honesty is needed during this time of uncertainty. Oh yeah, you look like the one that you had left the comment. Nah, nah. I oh, Oahu, Drew, Miss Drew. No, I'm gonna remain in my own bubble. I'm not gonna give a fuck about nothing that goes on. I'm a blonde haired, blue eyed white woman now for the next 4 years. Okay? Okay. Once again, thanks, and I'm out. Peace. How much what? How much? I don't know how much you're asking, but whatever you can afford, you can hit Madam Whip Ass on a dollar sign for Cash App. Seriously now, I gotta go. Peace.